Hey guys, welcome once again. This is Todd Hardin, Head of Operations for Plastic Oceans International, and this is another one-on-one with Plastic Oceans. These are these one-on-one chats, very casual, unrehearsed conversations we're doing with friends of our organization, our ambassadors, experts in the plastic pollution field and conservation fields as well. And today I'm really excited. We're going to be joined by a guy who I've known now for a little bit over a year. When we first started collaborating with him. His name is Sergio Rapu. He has, for the past 15 years, been producing documentaries and shooting them for such channels as the History Channel, Travel Channel, National Geographic, and Nova. He is the director of a film very near and dear to my heart, which is Eating Up Easter, one of the films that we at Plastic Oceans are involved with. Feature-length film that really, I'll say very little about it and allow Sergio to introduce himself in the film in just a moment, but it's really a powerful feature-length film that really hits on such topics as plastic pollution, sustainability, waste management, how tourism impacts small communities, and the loss of cultural identity, and really how globalization plays into all of those. So that's my real brief elevator pitch for the film. But Sergio, welcome to the conversation. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little bit your inside take as the director of Eating Up Easter.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I'm happy to be part of this. Eating Up Easter is basically that. It's a modern day story of Easter Island, where I'm from. It's a character-driven film, and we follow a handful of native Rapa Nui, native Easter Islanders, who are dealing with the effects of globalization in a variety of aspects, from a massive tourism industry that we have there to environmental issues caused by just overconsumption and living on an island, but then also the need to develop, the need to improve sort of as a community to better our lives.
Sure. It's for me, it's a film that follows a very interesting set of characters. One of whom is your father in the film, is one of the central characters in the film. And what was it like, especially as a documentarian, featuring your father in something and working with him? How did that go?
Yeah, well, my dad obviously has been very influential in my life. Aside from being my dad, he is also a politician, and he's also an anthropologist. So we've, for as long as I can remember, have had really philosophical discussions about a variety of things. But it's always been hard to record those, right? Because what he says to me over the dinner table is different than what he says when the camera's on. And really, I think it took a little bit of, like any filmmaker, that sort of build that trust between who you're filming for him to open up and kind of be more himself to me. It wasn't that he didn't trust me. It was just, I think, odd for him to see his son behind the camera asking him these questions.
Well, it's a very interesting, he's a very interesting character in the film, as is, Mama Piru, who's kind of was a local, I guess we'll say, environmentalist and activist on the island. What can you tell us about her?
Yeah, Mama Piru was an amazing character, person, leader in the community, real activist, from very, very, very early in her life. We spent about 3 years off and on with her, getting to know her and following her in the work that she does, which is mainly around recycling and the issues of microplastics that we have on the island there. Unfortunately, towards the end of the film, really right as we were kind of finishing the film, she passed away. It was something that came a bit suddenly, and obviously not only a huge shock for us, who, we were just, our lives were changed because of her during the course of the film, but obviously also for the island. And she still remains, the memory of her still remains as an incredible motivator to do better, to be better, for our environment.
Well, her passion definitely comes through in the film. She is at times a very funny character in the film that, having been to several screenings now, really becomes kind of the character that most people are endeared to, I think, through the process. So, obviously right now we're at a time with coronavirus, right, and the pandemic, where people are looking for great things to watch out there. I know right now with Eating Up Easter, it's not readily available somewhere as far as festivals are shut down. It's been in the festival circuit, by the way, and won several awards, correct?
Yeah, we had a very long theatrical run, at least the film festival run. It lasted a bit over a year. And since that point, we're now in this waiting period until it broadcasts, at least on PBS. It'll be broadcast on Independent Lens on May 25th. And, due to kind of coronavirus and all of that, the distributors that we've been working with have also have tried to be really innovative. And so we're actually having a virtual theatrical run starting next week on Earth Day, May 22nd, where basically art films and sorry, I'm gonna have to restart this.
Hey, it's natural.
I have my son here, it's it is what it is.
Part of our remote world, my friend. I'm waiting for my dogs to be barking or something. No worries whatsoever. Just as a reminder, we're talking with Sergio Rapu. He is the director of Eating Up Easter, which Plastic Oceans is very much involved with. And I would like to just also mention real quick too, Cartemquin, as well as Pacific Islanders in Communication. Is that correct? That was behind the film?
Yep.
As well as a certain co-filmmaker, if I recall.
There we go. He's out. All right, buddy.
Is he out because that co-filmmaker of yours took him out, or?
No, yeah, no, a little bit. Yeah, it's been tricky, learning how to be filmmakers, not only when you can't be filming, but then also while you're running around with two little boys. Trying to keep them happy and alive. And
well, what's the vibe there? I'm gonna just, as I'm talking here, I'm gonna share a screen real quick and just kind of take a look at where we are right now with coronavirus numbers. Oop, I just went away there. Where'd we go? What do we have? We're at almost 2 million cases now worldwide. I think about 28,000 that have now died in the United States, if I have those numbers correct. But yeah, what do you think? I mean, what's the vibe in Minneapolis? That's where you're based. You said earlier you're born in Easter Island, but you've been in Minneapolis for quite some time. But what's the vibe there in Minneapolis?
Distant, like most people, what's interesting about Minneapolis is, I think, because we have a fairly big, medical infrastructure, at least, there's a lot of medical device companies here, people that work in the medical field, at least in Minneapolis and St. Paul, it's being taken very seriously. So we've been able to lower our peak, or at least draw it out.
Yeah, I mean, this is showing just 6 deaths and 152 confirmed cases. Oh, that's in Ramsey. I bet Minneapolis is a little bit more than that.
Click over on that other red peg to the, what is that? Hennepin. That's where
34.
That's where I live there.
So so it doesn't seem to be here in Detroit, where I'm based. It's certainly become one of the hot spots for it. But streets of Minneapolis kind of empty like elsewhere.
Yeah, today very snowy. We had like 5 inches dump last night, and before that it was very sunny. So I think it's hard for people who've been cooped up all winter long to stay indoors when it gets nice. So what we've been seeing is, people get out and they're distant from each other, but very friendly. Like people wave at each other. It's like sort of a fresh breath of fresh air to see another human being, even if you don't really know them.
Yeah, I was forced to, after 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, to finally go out and do some shopping. So I was, a little hesitant, but I have to admit it kind of gave me a little bit of relief mentally to get out and actually interact, or at least even just to get in the car was a delight. So I was pretty excited about it because I hadn't left since, I believe, March 15th up until about 2 days ago. So,
oh, wow.
Now, what about on Rapa Nui? For those that don't know, Rapa Nui is the preferred name of the Rapa Nui people for the island instead of Easter Island or Isla de Pascua. Has there been much impact there with the pandemic on the island?
Yeah. In early March, there were like 0 cases there. And so the community really quickly assembled to try and stop any more flights coming into the island. It's towards the end of our tourist season, so there's still a lot of people there. They were able to do it. They stopped like any incoming tourists, and in the next couple of weeks got like the 1,000+ tourists that were stranded on the island off. And then soon after, kind of closing off to the rest of the world, they identified their first case. And now I think they're up to 5 cases. Everybody so far is doing well, no deaths. But it's really thrown the island for a loop, because this is a place that heavily depends on tourism, right? This movement of people back and forth is incredibly important to our economy. And there's 0 of it, like nothing. Right. They are bringing in food via airplane and ships still, but no people. So, I think the next year will be really telling for my community there about what we do with our economy. Do we go back to something that's a bit more sustainable or subsistence based? A lot of people have returned back to agriculture, at least starting to think about that. Which is really great, because the island is also heavily dependent on goods from outside. We probably import 80 to 90% of all the food that we eat. So
it's it's an amazing place. I've been fortunate to have visited twice now, all in the past year. A lot of people don't realize it is part of the country of Chile. And there's been, I think, like a lot of indigenous cultures, we see a lot of the same story, right? There are a lot of problems. There tends to be a lot of infighting, disagreements, politics, and such. I mean, what's the current state on the island in regards to that? I mean, what have you observed, or what are you aware of right now? What's going on there locally?
Well, as you said, it's governed by Chile, but it's very far away from Chile. I mean, it's the same distance from Hawaii to California. You have to take about a 5-hour flight to get out there. Unlike Hawaii, who has senators and representatives in the federal government in the U.S., Rapa Nui does not. We're a tiny little community. And so oftentimes we are, or at least we feel, overlooked by the federal government. Obviously, we have a lot of allies and senators there in the Chilean government. But it's been apparent, especially during this time, that it's important for the local community and the local leadership to take care of their own, right? Think about what is most important to your family, to those on the island, and act that way. Because the way that Chile is behaving based on the virus, the pandemic, doesn't always relate to what the island needs. So now more than ever, I think local leadership is really setting their own rules. Got it.
Your father, he was used to be a governor of the island. I'm sure there's been a lot of change since he's been there. And as you said a little bit earlier, the island is so reliant on tourism, even to the extent that, if this fact is still accurate, the per capita income is the highest in all of Chile. Is that still the case before the pandemic, we'll say?
Yeah, before the pandemic, for sure. We had so many people moving in that there was essentially a law created to slow that down, because it was just such a great place to go and make money from tourism, right? So now we're expecting that it'll probably, at least once the pandemic has settled a bit, at least probably a full year for tourism to come back. that'll be a drastic shift to at least the people that were working in it.
Well, we've been talking here with Sergio Rapu. I'm taking a look right now here just to show you a little bit about Eating Up Easter on the Plastic Oceans website. You can also go to eatingupeaster.com. Is that correct? Is it .com?
Yep.
Yeah. To learn more about the film, Ed Rampell has called it a major contribution to Indigenous cinematic storytelling. It's also been called one of the most important and moving documentaries to come out of Oceania in recent years, and a lush achievement by David Lipsett of the Oceania Journal. I'm pretty excited, though, just to kind of close things out and talk a little bit about a new take on the film that we've been collaborating with you on here at Plastic Oceans.
Yeah. We so recently we finished up a 30-minute version of the film, which is really great. I think not only for teachers who teach, in a 45-minute classroom period, but also communities and things. I mean, like, people want to be able to use the film as launching points for discussions. And at its original length of like over an hour, it's difficult to sit over that and then have sort of mental capacity to talk about stuff. So hopefully, the 30-minute version can be used by a variety of people and organizations to talk about those same issues on a remote island, but how it relates to their community.
Sure. Well, it really is a powerful education tool, even with the feature-length version of it. As I said earlier, Plastic Oceans is involved in helping distribute the film for educational purposes, along with some other partners as well. The short version will absolutely add on to that, and we are developing an education guide for that as well. As Sergio said earlier, the film will air on May 25th on Independent Lens and PBS, which I understand there will also be an education guide through Independent Lens as well. So that's exciting stuff. Yeah, I can't wait for the shorter version to come out, though. I think in the classroom setting, it's going to be super valuable for educators at all levels. So that's fantastic. So quarantine, what are you watching? What do you do to have time, whether it's eating or watching? I mean, what are you doing?
Oh man, we try and just stay with comedy and fun things. It's hard, like you read the news all the time and you get really depressed. So we're trying to watch things that are fairly positive. I just got into sort of the Quibi platform that's recently released. They have a lot of really fun content there. That's kind of it. I mean, I think laughter and hope and fun is really the name of the game for us here, especially with the kids, So.
Yeah, no, that's all you can really do. I mean, my situation's a little bit different. I have my elderly parents living with me, which, is certainly not the same as kids, but in some ways very similar, I'm finding. But, you worry about them. You worry, okay, I had to go out and go shopping at the grocery store because I could not get an order online for delivery or even curbside pickup. So you worry, like, if I brought something in, even though you're as careful as can be, you just don't know, what's going to happen with this. I think viruses are they're the invisible enemy, right? You can't see them, so it's scary. But
yeah.
I totally know how you feel. Well, listen, we certainly won't have any details now, but we certainly are excited to be working on another project, with you that unfortunately is on hold because of this. And we look forward to sharing information on that in the future. But stay healthy, my friends, stay safe. And I can't wait to get past this and be able to come spend some time with you and give you a big hug.
Yeah, me too. Take care, Todd.
All right. Thanks so much for the time.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.